who's going to be talking about permaculture.
Hi everybody, my name's Ben. I'm a permaculture designer and agricultural biologist.
Hold the mic close.
Is that better?
Perfect.
Okay.
Better.
And I think the real reason that I'm here is
Speak
to
up as well.
is to bore what remains of the police into submission. Okay, so we've heard a lot about what we don't want. Okay, so everybody knows, oh, I don't want this, I don't want that. Well, okay, so what do you do? Is then the big question. And you know, so I've noticed that space is really tight in London. It's hard to find very much space to be able to garden on, especially in the back of most of these brick houses that I see that most of the city seems to be composed of. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of space behind the houses, so it's going to be difficult to find space here, I think, at least very locally. I try to arrange things. I mean, I'm really lazy. I try to arrange things so that my total commute to work is about 5 meters. You know, I like wake up and walk out the door and then I'm at work, you know, so that's what I try to arrange. And then, you know, if I have any customers, which is, of course, assuming that I've already grown enough food for everybody else in the house, then I start thinking, where do I get rid of the rest of this food? And again, I'm lazy. I don't want to walk more than a quarter of a day, and I want them to meet me, you know, somewhere so I don't have to spend any time at market trying to get the food to these people. Well, fortunately, we now have things like telephones. So this is good. But okay, so what can you do in an urban situation? I see the total number of people here, and I see a lot of potential labor. Okay, so if we're looking at a field like this, that you guys, and maybe me too, could probably plant up most of this field in one day. And this would provide food year-round for probably about 10 to 15 people. I'm just saying this is a direct graphic example of you know, how to use space and use your own labor. But I think also something that, and I just got back from Greece while I was doing some skills sharing with some people. And in Athens, you have a very similar situation that you don't have much as far as in the back of houses or what have you. So what you do is you try to locally maximize the amount of space that you are actually using. So you get together a gang of like 4 to 6 people with shovels, and you knock on people's doors and you say, hey, you know, if you don't have food growing in your yard, can we grow food for you, and can we help you grow food in your yard? Just do this voluntarily. And a lot of people will be like, you're insane. And yeah, we're insane. We're going to try the next house, you know. But what you will find is a lot of single mothers who don't have time to be able, or the energy to be able to do this, pensioners, disabled people who have the space and can easily water it, but don't have the physical power to be able to plant it themselves. So these are the kinds of people that you'll find, and then they'll say, oh, well, you know, I've got too much zucchini. What do I do? How do I deal with this? And I say, well, you can donate it to the food bank, you know. So that's one way of going about it. Recently, Seattle, where I just was in January, has decided to install the first urban food forest in the middle of the city. I already was looking at the site back then and knew about the plan to prepare this whole thing. They already had some designers in there, and so I'm like, yeah, okay, you got it taken care of. So if you go above board and say to your whoever your local government people are and say, hey, you know, this empty space over here, we really would like to be producing food on it. Can we plant some fruit trees? Can we plant some fruit and nut trees on it? And again, we look at this field, plenty of space right here. You know, you could get probably 50, 60 fruit and nut trees right just on this space. So it's possible to maximize space. Cuba ran into the same situation when the Soviet Union collapsed. They're under sanctions from the United States. So their oil supply, their standard agriculture was cut off from oil, and they had a real problem, even if they're able to produce the food, getting it into the city for people to eat. They solved this by high-intensity urban agriculture, hand-tended agriculture to get the most possible yield in the least possible space. And now Havana is considered the model of urban agriculture. Another thing to look at is Curitiba, Brazil. Is a real good movie I went to the West Coast opening of, called A Convenient Truth. No, not Al Gore, and not An Inconvenient Truth, which of course is designed to scream about peak oil in order to increase the price of his oil stocks. But this is about a convenient truth or a series of urban solutions that were implemented for Curitiba, Brazil. They had real severe problems, slums, garbage, typical third world problems. And even if you could afford the trucks to get move the garbage, you still couldn't get the truck into the tiny alleyways of the favelas. So you couldn't even if you had the trucks and all of that, you still couldn't even get the garbage out. Well, one of the ways they solved their problems was with an aggressive education program. The children saying the treasure that is trash program, and what they did was they exchanged sorted bags of plastic, metals, etc., etc. If you have a sorted bag of garbage that's ready to be packed and sold to the recycler, then they would trade this for a bus token. So in this way, they were also using an alternative currency. Well, so naturally, the place was picked clean of all garbage that could be found within about a year and a half. This also provided a huge boost to the local economy because the working parents, had free transportation to get to and from work in exchange for garbage. It's worked out real well. Any questions?
Permaculture?
Oh, permaculture. Yes, permaculture is short for permanent agriculture, which is designed to be people talk about sustainable. Well, if you talk about flatline sustainable, well, that's not very attractive. But if you talk about being able to bank up your organic material into soil banks that retain that nutrition in the soil, that then turns into nutrition in your food, you're actually not sustainable in your agriculture. You're producing a surplus. And so that's what you really want out of your agricultural system is a surplus, not sustainable or just enough to be able to survive on. It's always nice to have a surplus in case, something fails or, there's a hard time or crop failure or bad weather or what have you. But the whole idea behind permanent agriculture is if you have a permanent agricultural system that's not destroying the soil base and not sucking fossil water out, instead charging aquifers, charging up the soil nutrition with, organic material and biota, then you're able to, from that platform to begin to have the logistical basis to create a truly sustainable culture and be able to address, equity problems and things like this, because at least you have that logistical base, get back from Greece, and they're talking about, we're probably going to have to fight the government at some point. And I said, well, I would leave that to professionals, but really any grandmother can water the garden. If you help her get the food planted, then you'll at least have a logistical basis for your war effort. Because you can win a tactical victory, but if you go home and don't have anything to eat, you're going to lose eventually. And so even if it comes to a situation of violent conflict, you get all the non-violent people growing food in order to support the professionals, okay? I lived in Nicaragua during the war, and there was another concept that was borrowed from the Soviet communists. Pick and choose, so the politics, whatever. But this was actually a really effective tactic, and that is shock worker brigades, where either by sheer labor or technical expertise in order to increase efficiency of the operation or what have you, you have this revolutionary tourism. Well, there's a war on, the currency's bottomed out, let's face it, beer is really cheap. And so, this is you go to a place like this, and you volunteer your labor to pick coffee, or if you're an architect, help design better buildings, or like we did, install a lumber dimensioning mill, and I helped build the first solar lumber dryer in Central America. And actually, people say, "What? You're cutting down trees?" And I said, "Well, you could be burning it off for cattle." It's actually, by using the trees and putting a value on the trees is actually slowing down the rate of deforestation because it takes longer to process the trees into a valuable product. So this gives the forest a chance to recover and isn't just burned off. And he was talking about biofuels. Well, not all biofuels are equal. As far as this giant centralized plants based on imports, Why not use kohler oil? It's the same thing, right? You're taking a massive import and you're putting it into a centralized location using this terribly intensive, transportation intensive situation. And here come the kids. And you want to talk about available labor.
Okay, after 3, dig.
But yeah, so as far as, like a friend of mine, Gunter Pauli, heads up Zero Emissions Research Institute, and maybe you've seen the company that produced his soap, Ecover soap. Anyhow, he's like, it's about unintended consequences. Like, okay, it's all natural product, and okay. So, but then he started looking at where are we getting the oil to make our soap, and it's palm oil. And then he discovered, much to his horror, that they had been burning off the jungle in order to plant palm oil for his sustainable, natural soap. Okay, so obviously, if we're talking about food or soap, you can only imagine what the consequences would be if they're burning off the poor orangutan's home for fuel, for electricity. I mean, I think you guys have a lot of waves around here, right, in the ocean, that the waves go up and down all the time, and this makes a lot of energy. You can tap this energy if you need electricity, okay? So there are certainly other ways to do these things than to burn off huge tracts of jungle in order to plant palm oil. But again, not all biofuels are equal. If you look at a decentralized distribution system for a process called pyrolytic gasification, this is actually a very good system because it's a net carbon negative producing a liquid fuel. I know he's going to scream, but it's my turn. But if the small farmer does this, as opposed to being a giant centralized effort, like for example, right now in Greece, the management practice for olives is that you trim the trees back to basically a stump up in the air, and then there's huge piles of brush, and you burn them off. This is an unbelievable waste, okay, of an existing resource. We're not talking about an import. We're talking they cut the tree off, leave it on the ground, and make a huge pile of brush and burn it. Okay, so this is a terrible management practice, and actually by making again this turn this in by being able to turn this what would otherwise be a waste product into something valuable, in other words, liquid fuel, and you wouldn't believe the price of gasoline in Greece right now, that then you can actually, the char that comes out of the machine is basically pure carbon, nearly pure carbon, and this improves the soil very good. It takes a very, very long time for this to break down in the soil. So you're actually storing more in the soil than you are burning off into the atmosphere when you put it into your gas tank.